Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're getting into the thinking of economist and political theorist Miguel Anxo Bastos. We're going to explore a worldview that takes a really common question and flips it completely on its head.
You know, we almost always start by asking about why poverty exists. Why do some people, some entire nations have so little? But according to the ideas we're looking at today, this is actually the wrong question to be asking from the get-go.
For a thinker like Miguel Anxo Bastos, poverty isn't some strange anomaly. It's the default setting for human beings. For pretty much all of our history, scarcity and hardship were just normal. So the real mystery, the thing that really needs an explanation, isn't poverty, it's wealth.
So let's dive into this. If wealth is the exception, not the rule, we've got to totally shift our perspective to figure out how it even gets created in the first place.
That brings us here. Bastos argues that the real engine for creating wealth isn't about what a country has, like oil or diamonds, but it's about what its people value. It's a cultural thing.
He argues that it's a society's culture that allows it to build up capital, and that means the tools, the machinery, the infrastructure. That's the real difference between a rich country and a poor one. And he boils it down to what he calls the three cultural pillars of wealth. First, you've got to have long-term thinking, a willingness to sacrifice today for a bigger payoff tomorrow. That then allows for the second pillar, saving. Just the simple act of not consuming everything you produce. And both of those are fueled by the third pillar, a strong work ethic that really values seriousness and effort.
He's got a great way of explaining this with the old Robinson Crusoe example. Think about it. For Crusoe to build a long stick so he can knock down more coconuts from a tree, he first has to save up enough coconuts to eat for a whole day while he's not gathering any. That act of saving frees up his time so he can build the stick. That stick is a capital good, and it makes him way more productive in the future. The point is, saving has to come before you can invest.
Okay, so if that cultural engine is the real key to wealth, Bastos then uses that same logic to build a powerful critique of socialist economics. He basically argues that any system of central planning is doomed to fail because it attacks that engine directly.
In his view, these two systems are just fundamentally opposed. And the central conflict, the thing that everything else revolves around, is private property. For Bastos, getting rid of private property doesn't just tweak the system, it breaks it completely.
And this brings us right to the heart of his critique. It's based on a really famous argument from the Austrian School of Economics called the economic calculation problem. Now, the claim here isn't just that socialism is bad or inefficient. The claim is that it's literally impossible to sustain as a complex economic system. Let's unpack this, because it's a huge point. It's a logical chain. If the state owns everything, all the factories, all the steel, all the tractors, then you can't have real markets where people buy and sell those things. If you don't have markets, you can't have real prices. And if you don't have prices, you have absolutely no rational way of knowing what to make or how to make it. The whole system just collapses under its own weight.
This is such a great metaphor for why prices are so critical. In this view, they aren't just random numbers. They're signals. They're packed with information. A high price for something is like a lighthouse blinking in the dark, screaming to entrepreneurs, hey, over here, people really want this stuff. Make more of it. And a low price says, we've got enough of that. Put your energies somewhere else. Without those lighthouses, the economy is just a ship sailing blind in the middle of the night.
So, following that logic, Bastos doesn't stop with just critiquing historical socialist states. He argues that even in our modern economies, the state itself has become one of the biggest obstacles to creating wealth. He draws a really sharp line between what he'd call a true free market, which is all about voluntary exchange, and the system he sees as dominant today. He calls it state-intervened or crony capitalism, which is filled with protected industries and regulations that actually kill off real competition. And for him, that's not really capitalism at all.
And he's particularly critical of the modern welfare state. He argues it systematically goes to war with those three cultural pillars of prosperity we talked about. It discourages long-term thinking and saving because, hey, why save for retirement if the state guarantees a pension? It creates what's called moral hazard. Why worry about your health if the state will just cure you? And, in his view, it weakens the family and community by taking over the roles they used to play.
Okay, so if the state is the problem, what's the alternative? Is it just total chaos? Well, Bastos envisions a completely different kind of social order, where all those essential functions are handled not by top-down government plans, but by organic, voluntary groups.
He points to what he sees as the true social safety net. It starts with the family, which he calls, and I love this phrase, the anarchist institution par excellence, because it works without anyone forcing anyone. Then you have the local community, private charity, and all those mutual aid societies and fraternal groups that used to be incredibly common before the modern welfare state grew so large.
So, to bring this all home, the core argument here is that real wealth isn't something that's designed by a committee in a capital city. It's what you call an emergent property. It's an unplanned, beautiful outcome of a culture that values the future and a system that's built on freedom, private property, and people dealing with each other voluntarily.
And that leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. If Bastos is right, if prosperity is fundamentally a result of culture and not policy, what does that say about how we try to solve our biggest problems? It makes you wonder, have we been aiming at the wrong target this whole time?